Hey, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a really big idea, corporate social responsibility, or CSR. It's a term you hear thrown around all the time, but what does it actually mean for a company to be good? Well, we're going to trace its entire 50-year journey, from a kind of fringe concept to an absolute boardroom essential.
And really, it all comes down to this one question, doesn't it? Is being a good business just about making a profit and, not breaking the law? Or is there something more to it? For half a century, some of the smartest people in business and academia have been trying to figure that out.
So to get our arms around this, our guide on this journey is a collection of landmark articles from the Academy of Management journals. You can think of this as the ultimate highlight reel, the biggest ideas and the major turning points that have completely shaped our modern understanding of corporate responsibility. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basic question: what even is CSR? Then we'll travel through the early decades, see how the idea expanded, and look at the modern era. After that, we'll get critical with a report card on the whole field, and finally, we'll peek into the future of good business. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's dive right in. What is CSR? The most important thing you got to know is that there isn't one single, simple answer. The definition has been stretched, it's been debated, and it's been totally redefined over and over again as our society itself has changed. Let's rewind the clock to the 1970s. One of the first really foundational definitions came from Keith Davis. His big idea was all in that one word, beyond. He was arguing that real responsibility meant going beyond the absolute bare minimum that the law and economics required. For the 1970s, that was a pretty radical thought. Then, just 6 years later, Archie Carroll comes along and basically changes the game by adding two crucial words, ethical and discretionary. And boom, all of a sudden, it's not just enough to follow the rules anymore. Now, society expects businesses to do what's right and to be proactive about making a positive contribution. This was a huge shift from do no harm to actively do good.
So, the academics have their definitions, but you can probably guess what the folks in the corner offices were asking, right? That's nice, but is it going to make us any money? The 1980s became all about trying to answer that very question.
And that's how the 1980s became the era of the business case. See, for CSR to be taken seriously in the real world, researchers knew they had to find a concrete dollars and cents link between being socially responsible and a company's bottom line.
And then, in this landmark 1984 study, we got some of the first real evidence. Cochrane and Wood dug into the data and found a clear positive link between a company's social reputation and how well it did financially. But here's the really interesting part. They also found that good CSR could actually reduce business risk, almost like a buffer when things go wrong.
Okay, so we've got a definition and we've got a business case starting to form. What happens next? Well, in the 90s and 2000s, the whole world of CSR just exploded. The conversation went way beyond just dollars and cents to include a whole new cast of characters and ideas.
The first major shift was this idea of zooming out. Instead of focusing only on shareholders, the owners, the conversation expanded to include all stakeholders. We're talking employees, customers, suppliers, the communities they operate in. Suddenly, CSR was this complex balancing act.
But at the very same time, the research also zoomed way in, right down to the individual. Psychologists started jumping in, asking, why do we, as people, get drawn to responsible companies? And the answers revolved around things like identity and pride. We want to work for and buy from companies whose values signal that they're good guys.
All this new thinking led to this incredible diversification in the 2000s. It wasn't just a management topic anymore. You had economists, environmental scientists, sociologists. All these different fields started bringing their own tools and perspectives to the table, which made the study of CSR so much richer and more complex.
This also brought a much-needed global perspective. A really influential study in 2008 pointed out that CSR isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. In the US, for instance, it's often explicit. Companies voluntarily do things and then talk a lot about it. But in much of Europe, it's more implicit. That responsibility is just assumed. It's baked into the laws and the social fabric. Culture, it turns out, is everything.
All right, let's just hit pause for a second and look at how far we've come. The 70s were all about just defining the idea. The 80s were about proving it made financial sense. The 90s brought in all the different stakeholders, and the 2000s saw this explosion of new theories from all over the academic map, which brings us to the modern era.
In the last decade or so, this is where CSR gets really sophisticated. It's no longer seen as just some separate charitable thing a company does. Nope. Now it's understood as a core part of business strategy, affecting everything from who you hire to how you manage massive company-wide risks.
So, let's break down how this works as a strategic tool today. First, it's a magnet for attraction. Top talent wants to work for companies that align with their values. Second, it builds identification. Current employees feel a stronger sense of pride and respect for their company. And third, and this one is fascinating, it acts like a form of insurance. A good reputation builds up what researchers call moral capital, which can actually protect a company when things go wrong, even leading to fewer lawsuits.
So after 50 years of study, thousands of articles, and countless hours of debate, how's the field of CSR research actually doing? Is it having the impact it should? Well, it's time to get critical and hand out our report card.
So here's the breakdown. On the plus side, the definitions have definitely evolved, and the research methods are way more rigorous than they used to be. But, and these are big buts, those nuanced definitions often don't make it into business schools or boardrooms. And while the research pulls from lots of disciplines, it rarely sees true collaboration across them. But maybe the most damning critique is this. For all the talk about helping society, the research often forgets to actually measure the impact on the very people and communities it's supposed to be helping.
So with that pretty tough report card in hand, where does the journey of good business go from here? What does the next chapter in this 50-year story look like? Well, the research points towards a very clear, if challenging, path forward.
The road ahead really requires a major shift. First, researchers need to move beyond just theory and start measuring the actual, real-world social and environmental impact of what companies do. That means getting out of their silos and collaborating with other sciences. And, crucially, it means including the voices of the people who are supposed to benefit from CSR in the research itself. Finally, business schools need to stop teaching simple case studies and start preparing future leaders for the messy, complex, and often politicized reality of doing good in the world.
And that brings us all the way back to where we started, but with a new twist. We've seen over 50 years of research that businesses have this enormous power to shape our society, for better or for worse. So the final thought is this: if businesses shape society, then who shapes the businesses? And the answer, really, is us. As employees, as consumers, as investors, and as citizens, we are all writing the next chapter in this story.